TSP Technology, thank you, Wendy Marvin, for the connection. They're an Oregon-based IT service provider. They focus on cybersecurity and compliance, compliance as a service for construction, medical, and financial service organizations. They were founded in 2009 by Rich, and they quickly became a family business when Nick joined the company in 2014. So their mission is to facilitate the safe, productive, efficient, and compliant use of technology. And I have to say, I got a sneak preview of this.
And just the same series of clicks as opposed to just...
oh, sorry. Somebody is not muted who is talking. So if you can mute the meeting, that would be awesome. Okay. Nick and Rich, are you guys ready to go?
We are.
Yes, we are.
Awesome. You should be able to share your screen.
I just take over?
Yep.
Okay, how about this one? See if we can
go.
figure this out. We've
Okay.
only been doing this for a year.
There
right?
we go.
Let's see if we can
You're good.
swap presenter view. Look good? All right. Thank you, Karen, and thank you to the RT3 organization for having us as our speaker today. It's really great to be in front of so many businesses that really embrace technology and understand how it's changing in the world and building your business by using technology that's out there. Unfortunately, with technology, though, comes risk. The more we build our stuff on this technology, the more risk there is. And it can be difficult. You hear it about in the news all the time, all these breaches, all these cyber attacks that happen. Both big and small businesses are affected. So it can be difficult to really know where to begin and where to start. So that's where the NIST cybersecurity framework comes in. And what the NIST cybersecurity framework is essentially a set of guidelines, voluntary guidelines that the government has put out. The NIST organization, National Institute of Standards and Technology, in 2014 really kind of reshaped their goals and what they wanted to do as what the role would be. And so they came out and said, businesses are using technology. We know there's risks. This is really critical. It affects our economy. It affects everything. So what do we do about it? So they came out with this framework that all businesses can follow. It affects everyone, including roofing industry. And it's not required, but it is a framework that's recommended by the United States government. People in the White House sitting there going, how do we protect our businesses in this country? What do we do to protect that? So they came out with this framework. And this slide is really a reference. You can go on the website. You can actually download the framework. It's 55 pages. It's a whole PDF. You can have it right there to review and read on your own. We can't obviously touch on every single component of it today. We only have 15 minutes, but for your reference, we'll make sure this gets out to you guys, but you can go to the website and download the actual PDF.
And yes, Nick, I've read the entire document.
Yes. It's a really interesting read. It's great. Lots of government terms and verbiage, and it's really super fun. But it is a very thorough framework to, again, protect you as a company. There's a bunch of terminology in there. There's NIST and DoD, and it sort of feels like a foreign language, but at its core, they are focusing on what businesses do and how to protect it. So we might use some of these terms throughout the slideshow, but essentially that's it. So again, it's really a set of guidelines, and it breaks it down into essentially from start to finish, from identifying who you are as an organization, your structure, what tools you use, what you currently have in place. There's each of these categories, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, has its own subcomponents and a sub list of questions to go through and document and look at and say, okay, who are we as a company? What are we doing to protect ourselves currently? What tools do we have? What happens when we detect something and how do we detect it? For example, something like if an employee is working from 9 to 5, but then you detect them working at midnight, logging into your system, A, can you tell that they've logged in? And B, what do you do? How do you respond? And then how do you recover in case of a breach? Something happens, how do you respond? How do you recover? How do you learn from your mistakes? And how do you get back to operating as a business and doing what you do best? So really, it's sort of a minimum starting point. And it's going to be the new norm. It's just the way things are moving. Cybercrime is growing at over 600% a year. every year 600%. It's just never ending. People are getting smarter and smarter in different ways and different ways to attack. And it's similar to airport security. You know, back in the day, we used to just be able to walk right through to the gate.
Not you, Nick.
Not me.
You're too young.
I grew up with a little bit stronger airport security. But it's like every time you go there, they want something more. No liquids, no, you got to take your shoes off. You got to go through multiple checkpoints and answer questions and show multiple forms of identification. And I'm going to need just a passport just to go to the next state over at some point. I'm sure it's so similar. And a vaccine at some point too, right? So it's all these things that none of us were used to doing, and it's kind of a pain. It's an annoyance at times, but they're based on vulnerabilities. So all these steps that they're recommending in technology is because there was a vulnerability somewhere. Someone was affected, someone's negatively affected. And so it's like, okay, that happens. Here's a roadblock to try and prevent that from happening in the future. So it's really a whole framework, but it's going to be the new norm, and it's good to just.
If I may add a point to that, the 600% per year is pretty significant number. So speaking with experts in the industry, it's not a matter of if you're going to be hit with, cybercrime. It's a matter of when. So that's a big eye opener for people. So continue, Nick.
Yeah. So besides just being a framework and how do you protect yourself, why else would you want to implement something like this? It seems pretty thorough. It seems like there's a lot. Why else would you want to do this?
You talk to Pete.
Rich?
Someone else was speaking, but anyways, yeah. So why implement it?
Okay.
Well, the main reason is because it helps, owners, executives, managers assess the risk and the impacts of data loss. What would happen if, you couldn't access your data for an hour, a day, or a week? What would happen if your employees couldn't work? What would the impact be of, downtime while you recover from an attack? So those are the questions that you really have to, focus on, and it's a part of the framework, which makes it, I wouldn't say simple or easy. It makes it, I guess the word is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple because it gives you a line by line item for the correct questions to ask and to be able to, come up with some good answers. And if you're working with government contracts in any way, or somehow you have to comply with HIPAA, the NIST cybersecurity is an excellent starting point for all of that, because they're all based on it. And we have a slide later on to show that if you're doing government contracting and you have to comply with CMMC, and then it's just a variation of the NIST, cybersecurity framework. And in the event that a breach that occurs on your network and some of your data gets out there and it somehow harms your clients, it puts you in a more defensible position, because you just didn't Google, how do I protect my network? You actually took a government-defined document and implemented it step by step. And if you did it correctly and you have all the documentation that you did that, you're definitely going to be, presentable or defensible in a court of law, which, also involves business continuity. How do you recover? Where will our staff, gather after, something bad happens? How do we continue our business? Where do we, restore our data to? So it helps you, come up with a plan for that too. And if you have service providers, taking care of your network, well, it gives them a guideline. It gives you a guideline to ask them. The question is, okay, what are you doing for this step of the framework. What technologies are you using to do the second step, and what vendors are you using, to provide us those technologies? Have you vetted them? Are they, meeting, the cybersecurity framework, requirements? And the bottom line is that, the last line of defense financially really is insurance. Once everything goes, bad and it blows up, you have your insurance policy, your liability policy, and hopefully you've all heard of cyber insurance. If you don't have cyber insurance, you should, because it's absolutely critical these days. But as we all know, insurance companies are not in the business they're not in business for making payouts. They're in business to make a profit. So, the policies are very, very specific on what must be in place for that policy to be valid. So if, you start the claim process, if you have this cybersecurity framework in place, which means you have all the documentation that goes along with it, then you'll be in a much better position to recover, as opposed to, sort of winging it and not having anything in place. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Nick.
Yeah, so if you go and decide you want to do and implement this policy and this framework, number one recommendation is to consult a third party. There's just so much to do and so much to organize. There's a lot of tools out there that can automate a lot of this to make these documentation and policies and procedures very, very simple. Like I said, it's not easy, but it is simple. But it's probably not something you can just Google and decide, I'm going to implement this by myself. Definitely recommend consulting a third party. But before you even do that, you have to decide as an organization, all levels of the organization, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this and really tackle this take this head on. Because it does affect every single component of your organization, there has to be some compliance with your staff, everyone from part-time to full-time to managers to the different departments. Everyone has to work together in this, and communication is absolutely critical, because again, it's going to significantly adjust your policies and procedures. It's going to change the way you do business. Employees are going to be forced to do certain things that they maybe aren't used to, or they don't want to, or it gets in the way. I have to do this and this and this, and this kind of sucks, but it's absolutely critical. And so you have to, one, be on the same page, two, be ready for adjustments, and three, you have to allow for a proper timeline to complete this. This is not an overnight fix. This is really from start to finish, from the audit of your current situation and the follow-up plan for implementation. This is a 6-month type process. So it takes some time, and then it also must include some scheduled and ongoing maintenance, just because of the evolving threats and technology changes that are out there. So it's kind of everyone on the same page. We're going to change some things. It's going to get in the way, but hey, tough luck. You got to do it, or you're going to be kind of left behind. I know this group is really focused on being ahead and embracing technology, so that's great. But just as a heads up,
it's not the kind of thing that you just do it once and forget it. It's something that you have to maintain. You have to have ongoing reviews and upgrades of technology, like the last bullet point points out. But it's a forever thing, and it's only going to get more complex as technology evolves. Nick?
So Rich had mentioned, if you do any government work, either as a contractor, subcontractor, or even their vendors, you have to comply with CMMC, which is another acronym. But it was implemented in 2020, December, by the Department of Defense to say, hey, if you're going to do any kind of contracting work, you must comply with NIST, Cybersecurity Framework. So it gets you there. So whether you're currently working with contracts or you're looking to get there, there's 110 controls that must be implemented. And if you don't comply, they can actually come at you with the DoD, Department of Defense False Claims Act, which was actually started back in like the Civil War, when companies came out and said, hey, we're going to build you these beautiful uniforms for your soldiers. And they set up like a prototype and said, here's this awesome uniform we're going to supply to everyone. They said, okay, but then when they actually delivered on the uniforms, they were shoddy. They were crap.
So you can get fined up to like 1.5 times the value of the contract. So they're pretty serious about it, because in the past, what's been happening is everybody checks the boxes, says, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that, but nobody's really doing it. So now you're going to have to, present your results and post them on their website, and you have to be open to an in-place audit. Just like, here we are, we're going to do an audit. But this again is for DoD contracts. But as time goes by, state and local governments are going to start implementing something very similar to this. So you're going to have to comply by some kind of, NIST framework, document or what have you.
Yeah. So really, it's a great first step for no matter what your organization is doing and where your future is. And if you continue to use technology and you continue to build on it, it's not just a hammer, a nail, and a piece of paper anymore. It's a whole new industry. And so the NIST cybersecurity framework is recommended by the government to implement. If you would like to discuss this further, we're happy to go over that. 15 minutes is tough to go through everything, but we're happy to do a follow-up phone call for anyone that's interested. 30 minutes, hop on the phone, ask your questions. That's what we're here for. We work with businesses in the Portland, Oregon area, but have tools and resources to reach out to anyone. So anyone that's interested, that's our contact information, and we can make sure Karen and Heidi get that to distribute.
And if you have a service provider, you should be asking, we would recommend that you ask them these questions, is like, are we complying with, the cybersecurity framework? So, and which will get the conversation going at least.
Yeah. So bring this information back to your teams, to your organization, follow up with any questions. We're here. And that's kind of the 15-minute rundown of NIST. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich and Nick. That was, it's hard to put all that into 15 minutes, but that's a glimpse. And for everybody, we're going to open it up to questions, but I will put the link to the full framework out in our Slack. So anybody that wants to reference that and send that to your IT providers, you'll have it. Questions?
Anybody?
Well, I'll ask a question. One of the things that I have been curious about, and every time I ask a question, I get a different answer, is how should we go about determining how much cyber insurance we should carry?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it really depends on what what level of risk you're willing to take on, sort of self-insure, but by doing some kind of audit like this, you'll understand where you're at and what the impact of downtime would be, so you can gauge that with, how much insurance would be required. But it also depends on, the size of your organization, and obviously, if there is a breach, that whole process is going to take, forensics. It's going to involve attorneys, and it could result in, major, losses or expenses. So, I don't know. I can't really answer that question, except that it really has to do with your risk propensity and how much you're willing to pay out of pocket if the event does happen.
I have a question just to add on, maybe if you can, gentlemen, can you give, for the contractors on the call, can you give some examples of the typical, like examples of attacks that could be made on their business to cause these kind of headaches? Like, what are these nefarious characters that are out there in the world, and I know they are out there, what are they, what are they typically doing? How are they attacking businesses like roofing contractors, and what are the tactics that they're using?
Well, the main tactic that they use is email through phishing. if I may ask,
So they like maybe define phishing for us. Like
phishing
is the level of
when
knowledge would be at.
When you receive an email or something, and it presents information to you that looks like it should be from your bank, or it looks like it might be from your colleague or from another company that you work with, and they ask you to put in sensitive information like an account number, a password, or what have you, something like that. And because it looks so real, you go ahead and do it. And then typically it results in them gaining access to your email through the portal, the web portal, and it results in, them using your contact list to send out more of the same to everyone. But the ultimate goal is for them to, get on a system, deploy a package, which would be a piece of software, which would give them control of your computer. And once they have control of your computer, they would have access to your financial data if you have access to it, or whatever else is on your computer. So, but yeah, phishing is the main way that they do it. And if I may ask a question of everyone, how many of you have two-factor authentication turned on in your email system?
I do.
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, but the vast majority of people don't. It's just not because they don't want to do it, it's because they don't know about it and don't even know what two-factor authentication is for email. So those are the kinds of things that your IT service providers should be talking to you about.
And if I can add on just to reframe sort of the mindset, you asked, how does it affect contractors? How does it affect roofing industry specifically? The number one attack that's out there is called ransomware. And the unique thing about ransomware is it will encrypt every single file that you use as an organization if it's not properly protected. And when I say encrypt, I mean it's going to lock down your files and make them gibberish. You can no longer use them until you either have like a backup restored or you pay an actual ransom. They leave this nefarious little note on your computer that says, haha, we got you. Give us money if you want your files back. And the thing about it is it doesn't matter what that file is. They don't really care the content of it. They know that you rely on it. We rely on documents, digital documents every single day to do our jobs. Everything from email to work orders to invoices to financial records, everything. And if you don't have systems in place to recover from that, they're going to ask you for money. And then they eventually sometimes do give you that back. But that's just how they make a lot of money on this. This is a full-blown business out there that exists from like, you can even have help desk CEOs and executives of this cyber crime. So it's not necessarily why would people care about roofing industry? Why would people care about my stuff? They know that you care about it and it affects you specifically, and they can play on that fear to try and get some money out of it.
If I can throw out one more example, which happened just yesterday to one of my clients. Once they've gained access to your email contacts, they then send to your business contacts invoices for those clients to pay. They pay those because they look like they just came from Matrix Roofing. They can collect money that way, and I don't know if it's proven that the company that got hacked would be responsible for those losses that are paid to the hackers, but certainly it's not a situation where you want to have a client call you and say, hey, why'd you send us that invoice for $15,000 and then not know where it came from or have to pay it out of your pocket because you got hacked. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And to add a little bit to that, if the source was your network, it does put you in the line of fire. So once attorneys get involved, they're going to be looking for, where the source was. They're going to have the forensics people, determine that. And if you didn't do anything to try to stop that, it could make you liable in a lawsuit.
We've got a couple of questions, and one that was on my mind. And Tom, that reference about the invoice, we just got one of those, Heidi, at Roofer's Coffee Shop yesterday. And I was like, oh, and we just recently set up through Barracuda, you know, caution, this email is outside of your organization, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. So Andy had asked about, and you guys being in Oregon may not, I've never heard of this before, but maybe somebody on the call, would this get a company up to compliance with the New York State Shield Act? And Andy, I don't know if you want to hop on and explain what that is. Is that a security requirement to operate in the state of New York?
You might not be able to.
He's on there. Yes, it's state mandate.
Okay.
So I don't know the specifics of that specific act, but yes, because this is coming from the United States government and it's an extremely thorough framework. If you implement this, you're gonna get close to what they're asking, if not completely, because there's hundreds of points that you can go through and answer and document and policies and procedures. If you implement this and you can prove it, you know, and you can say, here, I'm doing this because the United States government said so, then the state of New York is probably going to be okay with that as well. So, but I don't know anything about that specific act.
Okay. And a question came through about recommending on-site servers versus cloud for your files.
Well, that really depends on your business model, and you know, there's a lot to be said to the cloud environment, but in terms of security, you know, there's really no difference. I mean, you have to secure both of them, you know as well as you know, server, local server. You know, there is a use case for that still. And it depends on, you know, what you do, you know, what your line of business is. But there's really, you know, you can't really say, and I'm assuming that this is the reason of the question, is one more secure than the other? Well, not really, because, you know, these guys are really good at what they do. They can get on and hack into anything, basically. So I don't know if that answered your question, or.
Well, I think I can. It does answer your question, but I can expand on it a little bit. I mean, one of the benefits of the cloud, or I guess if you ever wonder what a cloud is, it's essentially just those servers that you have on site, but placed in this data center, this huge building, secured, locked down. So we have a cloud that we operate, and it's a bunch of high-end servers operating in this super secure environment. So on one hand, physical security and security does improve. That's not to say you can't have that on site locally. In your own office, in your own building, you can absolutely have these servers on site, and that is sometimes the better solution. But in a cloud environment, it is technically a little bit more high-end type protection. But there's risks everywhere. There's no 100% way of protecting yourself, but it just depends on how you operate as a business and what makes sense for you.
Yeah.
How frequently should a company be reviewing their cybersecurity plan?
Quarterly. It's actually, the service that we provide allows for continuous scanning of your network and then a quarterly review for any changes that need to take place. But you really have to have automated tools to do that, because it's really difficult to go from step 0 to this is what's going on. So once you have the tools in place, it's just a continuous review and then a quarterly review with your IT service provider.
Wendy, Marvin, how are you? You guys just started like this year implementing this stuff, right? How's it going?
Yeah, it's a pain. You know, the employees are never happy about dual authentication and things like that. But, you know, as they mentioned, it's necessary. So our going forward is just looking towards that. You know, we're looking to do the government certification so that we will be working with the DOJ and things like that. And so it's nice to have that, you know, we're ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's never fun to be the bad guy to say, hey, we got to turn this security feature on, and you as the employee, sorry, we're the bad guy, but we got to do it. So we can definitely attest to that. But all of Wendy's staff has been wonderful and super nice.
Yeah. That's why a third-party company can make them the bad guy. That's
yeah.
Yes, awesome. We've been there.
Any final questions for Rich and Nick before they go? Nope. All right. Well, you guys are welcome to hang around and listen to our task team updates, or feel free to go. Thank you so much for sharing the information. And I'll be sure to share your contact information with everyone in case anyone has further questions.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Karen.
it.
Right.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.